Good morning, my people. How are you today? We're gonna get started. I'm gonna do. I know you guys have heard me talk before about Mount Rushmore and the fact that they desecrated Mount Rushmore with these faces of the presidents. But I never really thought about telling you the story because I didn't think Donald Trump would get as ratchet as to also go on to a Native American land and desecrate it all over again. I've told you a little bit about the fact that Native Americans are on reservations. These lands that were given to them by treaty are supposed to be sovereign land that they own, that they control. An American government in the Constitution is not supposed to use their land for any other use. I could tell you every last agreement that was ever made with the Native Americans was broken. So I'm going to go on here real quick and do some hellos. Good morning. I forgot to start tagging people. So hopefully folks will come up and know that I have started already. So I'm going to, because I know my history a little better than Native American history, I'm not going to try to memorize it all, although I know a lot about it. So I wanted to make sure that I get it absolutely correct. So the creation of Mount Rushmore is a struggle, and at a time with the desecration of the Black Hills. There are sacred land in Lakota Saui, and that's the Native Americans in North Dakota. The original occupants of the area when white settlers arrived. For some, the 4 presidents carved in the hills are not without a negative symbolism, just like all of the statues that they built. The Sioux Indians have never had much luck dealing with white men, and they're not the only ones. We haven't had much luck dealing with them either. But in 1868, the United States government promised the Sioux territory that included the Black Hills in perpetuity. That means you own this land forever. Perpetuity is forever, infinity. The perpetuity lasted only until gold was found in the mountains. And I tell you, this is the ratchetness behind white men in America. So you told them that they could have their land back, the land that you stole in the first place, into perpetuity. However, the Native Americans aren't as ratchet as the white American men were, so they allowed them to come in on their land. They traded with them and so forth. Someone came on the land and found gold. Well, you know what happens when they find money? They don't give a damn about whatever promises that they made. So the gold was found in the mountains, and the prospectors, migrants, I don't know how you're going to be a migrant when you invading somebody's land, in 1970, in the 1870s. The federal government then forced the Sioux to relinquish the Black Hill portion of their reservation. Now I need you to kind of take that in. They gave you your land that you stole back. Some white man comes on your land and says, there's gold in them here mountains. The government then came back and rescinded their agreement that said in perpetuity. So I wouldn't give a daggone if you found diamonds in the hills. They came back and took the part of the land that had the gold. You cannot, when I tell you this country is built on lies, deceit, it's built on the elimination of cultures. You know the big fight with what was her name? I don't even remember these white folks' names that would be running. Elizabeth Warren, when she kept saying that she had Indian. For Native Americans, because in their tribal traditions, they don't go by whether you had blood relation as a Native American. For them, it's whether you carry the culture. Because when the white man came to America, they raped so many of the Native American women that if they went by bloodline, because then you had to have pure bloodline, that would have to tear apart some of their families, and they weren't willing to do that. So what they did is if you grew up in the culture, you are considered native of that culture, of that particular tribe. Has nothing to do with your bloodline, but whether you follow the traditions and the culture. And that all came about because the white man tainted their bloodline by raping the women of the Native American tribes. So the events fit the pattern of the 19th century at a time nearly constant conflict between the American government and the Plains Indians, that's the Indians in the mountains. At his second presidential inauguration in 1873, Ulysses S. Grant reflected the attitude of many whites when he said he favored a human course to bring to the Native Americans, a humane course to bring to the Native Americans. Under this being influence of education and civilization, it was either this or war of extermination. Again, you can't make this up. It's hot out here, guys. I'm sorry. But the Native Americans were told, you're savages. So we have to take your land because you aren't bright enough, that you done had this land for how many millions of years before the white man got there, but you're not capable of taking care of this land. And so you have to take our education. If you choose not to take our education, we're going to annihilate you. In other words, we're going to kill every last one of you. I need you to understand that. I need you to understand this United States is not the great country that we have been told. They, between kidnapping us and bringing us here, they almost annihilated the entire population of Native Americans of every single tribe, and it was thousands. It was thousands. Every single treaty that the United States government made with the Native Americans, they took back if they found something on that land. Just recently, I don't know if you guys saw it, I think I talked about it, about 2 years ago, there's a pipeline under Montana where some Native Americans are. And they wanted to run this pipeline through Native American territory. Now, in this particular part of Montana, in the winter up in the mountains, it is freezing. And the Native Americans still do not use, guns or the American ways of killing each other. So they came out with their native weapons, and they were all lined up, the entire tribe, women, children, seniors, and everyone. They lined up, and it was a standoff with them and some white folks that were trying to get into this land to do these pipelines, given permission by your president. So they couldn't fire on them with weapons because they had no weapons. So what they did, it was 30 degrees below zero. They brought out fire trucks with water hoses and started hosing these people down in 30 degrees below zero. So again, we have to stop. Let's stop talking about the Great America, because that hasn't happened yet. It hasn't happened for anybody, and specifically for the Native Americans. Now, why Trump needs to go there for 4th of July, I have no other reason except that he just wants to be ratchet. But in South Dakota, there are 5 actual people on that Mount Rushmore, and the faces on there, which are white men, but there's one face on there that is a Native American, because the Native Americans did. You're gonna carve out 4 white men on our land. They carved out an even bigger, and I think it's Big Bull. So I'm going Sitting Bull, that was his name. The South Dakota Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse led the various Sioux tribes against the U.S. Army. Now, we heard about these names on television, but it was more like, they made it seem as if those were imaginary people. But Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse was actually 2 chiefs in the Native American community. They had notable success against General George Armstrong Custer and his troops. Remember General Custer? I know we know that from our civics, if you guys took it. But the Americans' defeat at the Battle of the Little Bighorn in American Centennial Year 1876, 100 years after they wrote the Constitution, they took back this land that they had given them way back in 1868. So the centennial was in 1876. It caused the federal government to redouble its effort. Some of the area in which Rushmore stands eventually purchased by the state of South Dakota. How can you purchase something that belongs to somebody else? Why are you trying to purchase something that belongs to somebody else? It is their culture. Did you not do enough of raping and killing and destroying a culture that you feel it necessary to go back, steal their land, and then tell them that if you don't take our education, we will kill you? It's unbelievable. Good morning, John. And hi, Pop. In the best-selling 1970 history book of Native Americans' Experience in the West, Barry Hart at the Wounded Knee, Dee Brown explained that the battle was actually a massacre while hundreds of unarmed Sioux women, children, and men were shot by the United States military. Back then, they didn't call them military, they called them troops. The entire reservation, because the men were gone. They waited till the men went hunting and came and shot every woman and child in this particular slaughter at the Battle of the Wounded Knee in 1990. So it's best-selling in 1970 History of the Native American Experience. My Heart at Wounded Knee is what the book is called, and by Dee Brown. The battle was actually a massacre, like I said, where hundreds of women and children were killed. The history of Wounded Knee would spur American Indian Movement, the AIM, the activists to occupy the site in 1973. They're still fighting right now for their property that you took way before. See, this is the other lie. African Americans had already been in the Americas before slavery. So let's be clear. The first Africans that hit this continent were not slaves. They had already come from Africa dealing with the Native Americans, trading, and if you look at the totem poles, for instance, in Native American culture, if you go into Mexico and go to Chichen Itza and go into the culture, some of it is very, very similar to the culture in the African American, not only African American, but the African cultures. So they did a lot of trading of pots and the different, tools for cooking. They exchanged ideas, exchanged cultures. And so when slavery did come about, the Native Americans were the first people to try to help us. So we don't give them as much credit as we should as Black Americans, descendants of slaves, because the Native Americans never tried to kill us. They never tried to kill us. And in fact, they tried to get as many of us free as they could because they knew that we would help them. And in doing so, a lot of them lost their lives. So as we take another day of 45 going into another culture and desecrating their land for his purposes, it's quite shameful. And I told you to add, insult to injury. The building of Mount Rushmore with these faces of these presidents was contracted by the Ku Klux Klan. So there was no good reason. So when I was saying to tear down Mount Rushmore, it's not only did you build this desecrate this holy mountain. I don't even know what land I could tell you. Let's say go to the holy lands of in Mecca, or go to the holy lands in Israel, and then build a statue of take land and build a statue of 45. Now that is about as holy of land that I can think of where the culture is the land. You don't see white statues built anywhere in Africa. of white men. Um, but we have to understand that this America just never was great. I mean, we wanted to believe it because we were here. We wanted to believe it because we have put so much of our work into building this land and making this land the thriving country that it is. But we've never been respected, we've never been paid for it, and we've never been giving our just due for all that we have given to this country. And as they continue to try to wipe out entire cultures, as they did with the Native Americans, Donald Trump would not think twice to wipe out every African American in this country if he thought he could get away with it. So what I'm saying to you, when I said to wear black tomorrow, it's not just for us. I want you to do it for the Native Americans that have to allow this man, even though the chief of the Sioux tribe sent a letter to Washington and asked him, please do not trespass on our land. And do you think they even got an answer? No. So yes, 45 is going to go and desecrate the land of the natives, whose land that they stole, whose people that they slaughtered, whose women that they raped, to the point that they don't go by bloodline anymore because they know that their bloodline has been tainted by the white man who took their lands. And white America, for those of you who watch, those of you care, you really should sit back and really examine yourself, examine your bloodline. You can say a lot of things about black people, and you can say that we're born with this and that. You can say we're descendants of monkeys and we could be descendants of all of that. You are possibly descendants of Lucifer. There's no more evil of any people, more evil than the English colonial people and the white people in America. The amount of death that you will rain down on someone who just won't listen to you or take your story as a true story. The way you change history books and change the value of the people who lived and was born in this land. I really feel sorry for you. I really do. I know that God is going to rain down on you. And I'm not here giving you no preaching. You know, if you are people or readers of the Old Testament, because I don't want to hit the New Testament, then I'll have to have some problems with my Muslim brothers and sisters and my Jewish brothers and sisters. I'm going to stay over here in the New Testament. There has only been once in this time that we know of where a pandemic has ravished the entire world. And those are in biblical times. Locusts, the floods with Noah's Ark. We, right now, are in a biblical moment where God is raining down on the entire country with a pandemic that's going to kill hundreds and thousands and possibly millions of people if we count up the whole world together. And we have to recognize that, you know, God is sovereign, he's omnipotent, he's all-knowing. He sees the evil in this land. He sees who is perpetrating the evil. So don't think for a minute, because you are white and in charge, that you're more powerful than God. And I know you want to believe that God is white. I know you want to believe he had blue eyes and all of that. But you would be ignorant to even think that. Even if we take your story that you wrote it, King James, out of England, and we're talking about Ethiopia. Ethiopia is right dab in the middle of Africa. We're talking Egypt, and my Papa Allah is on here. Egypt is in Africa, all right? You want to put Israel in the Middle East, that's fine. But if during the time when Moses was born, if you could not tell Moses from an Egyptian and a Palestinian, they had to look alike. And I'm just telling you, When they were trying to kill all of the babies because they knew the Messiah was going to be born, you got to ask yourself, the people had to look alike. If Bathsheba was from Ethiopia, that's a long way in Africa from Egypt. So, no, I'm not giving you a Bible lesson. I'm just telling you what I learned when I grew up, because my mama made us read the Bible every day. And you don't have to read the Bible. Just take it as a history book. Because the Muslims, the Jews, and the Christians, at least my faith of Christianity, because you got everybody that just kind of redoes this faith as they want, is pretty consistent in the Old Testament in beliefs of the prophets and the miracles of God. You have the evolutionaries with the Big Bang Theory, but who made you breathe this morning? Who allowed your eyes to see, your ears to hear, the sun to shine, these bushes to be green? You tell me a white man that did that. The sun that's shining in the sky, they still trying to get to the moon. If this was man-made, you should have been there by now. No, this is a making of God. This pandemic is for me, it made all the world stop and listen at one time. You could not have did a decree by agreement of the G8 to tell everybody to stay in their house and watch one man die for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. That was God. He wants you to know he made you and he can destroy you in a blink of the eye. So Donald Trump, you can do what you want to do, but not for as long as you want to do it. Because my God reigns, and he's going to rain down on you. Talk to you later, people. I love you. Grace and peace.